welcome back to The Single Cook. My name is Tiffany and I am making recipes for a single person. Some of them are going to be recipes that are much bigger and they can be used in multiple ways to create round two recipes, which is what we're going to be doing today. And some of them are just going to be single recipes. So today let's talk about cheats because this is a round two recipe that most people would think, oh, it's going to take forever to make, and that is chicken pot pie. So the last time that you were with us, we made a roast chicken dinner, and a roast chicken is kind of a lot for one person. So I've found a bunch of round two recipes that I like to make, and I make them all the time, that are really delicious and it uses up that extra meat. So let's talk what to do. So normally I would take the leftover chicken bones, and I've already removed the bones from all of my meat that was left over. I would take the bones and I would take vegetable scraps from today's vegetables, and I would make a broth. And I've in fact done that, but much earlier, like months ago. But I made a giant stock pot of it so that I could reduce it down. And when I say giant, I mean a commercial grade pot. Made a giant pot of broth and I reduced it down and down and down until it fit into half of a mason jar. So I already have my broth, but it is supremely concentrated. So I'm going to be using that as my cheat. I don't have to make a broth today because I've already made it. Let's talk about other cheats. So vegetables. A lot of people hate chopping vegetables. It takes so much time, especially when you're dealing with something like pot pie. So one of the cheats that I like to do most of the time is canned veggies, either mixed vegetables or just peas and carrots. It cuts down on a lot of the time, and most of the time you only have to warm it through. So, canned vegetables, stock that you've already reduced down, or using pieces from a carcass that you've already done, or leftover scraps from veggies that you have to cut anyway. Uh, the crust, let's talk crust. I can make biscuit crust. I can make a pastry crust. I can make it look like a big, beautiful pie. However, that takes time. And I don't really have that much time during the school year. So, one thing that I like to do canned biscuits. I have these lovely ramekins that I put my pies into individual servings. And then I top it with two biscuits. So I get just enough bread and just enough pastry to cover the top of my pie without it being overwhelming or too much bread and without it taking up a ton of time. Also, the little ramekins, another little cheat code, because if you're using a big thing, you have to figure out how to store that. These, however, are lovely because, hang on, they have lids. So I can pop a lid over top of my pie and put it in the fridge, take it for lunch if I have an extra. Today, I think I'm only going to be making two, so it's going to be relatively easy to eat. I also use one more cheat code. When I'm making my sauce for my pot pie, I can do a roux and I can mix in the broth and I can mix in the cream and make it all nice and creamy and use the flour and the butter and all of that. But again, it takes time and lots of stirring. Uh, Today, I'm going to actually be cheating with cream of mushroom soup. Cream of mushroom mixed with a little bit of my broth and the veggies that I'm going to cook will make a lovely sauce for my chicken pot pie, and it will still mix the flavors beautifully. So I don't have to take the time to make the broth, to make the roux, to make the sauce, to make the dough. I don't have to do all of that. I can use a bunch of cheats. So with that being said, let's get into the cooking. Okay, we are back at the stove. So let's start cooking. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of tablespoons of butter and I'm going to put it in the same pot that I roasted my chicken in last night. Now, this may end up being too big of a pot for what we need, but it still has all of that flavor. I haven't washed it yet because it was just yesterday that I made that roast chicken video, not the full like couple of days. So, I'm going to put a couple of tablespoons of butter in the bottom so that our vegetables can get nice and translucent when we start to cook them. Pop that in there. Okay, we'll move our butter back. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some carrots and mushrooms that I have already cut. Actually, let me light my fire first. Get that butter going. Pot going. So I've got about 5 button mushrooms and 2 carrots that I have peeled and diced, and I'm going to put those right in my pan. And then I have an onion that I have diced up. Now my onion is way too much for what I need, and I'm going to use the rest of it in a different recipe. So I'm going to take probably a third of this container. And because I diced up the whole onion already, I can just pop the lid back on and put it back in the fridge and use it for another recipe. And all that prep work is already done with a couple of minutes of already dicing the onion. So we're going to let those vegetables start to cook in that butter. And I'm not going to season anything just yet because I am putting it in a dirty pan. It already has seasoning up on the sides and the bottom of the pan. And then later on I'm going to be adding some more, but I don't need to do anything with the seasoning just yet. So we're going to let that cook and we will get back to it in a moment. Okay, so I've adjusted the camera a little bit so that you can see what exactly is going on inside my pot. So we are going to just give these a little bit of a stir as we let things kind of get translucent and soft and lovely. Okay, this has reached the point where I'm going to add in my garlic. So I'm going to I have garlic. I can chop and peel garlic, but again, it takes forever when garlic is an option. I like a lot of garlic. I'm going to use my knife, and I'm going to put a couple of bladefuls in there. And mine is in water, so I'm going to add a little bit of the water too. And we're going to give that a stir. Let that garlic go all fragrant. And that little bit of water will help with things like the carrots as well, to getting them a little bit softer, a little bit quicker. Not too worried about the mushrooms or anything like that. And the onions are just about right. So let's start building our sauce. So I'm going to take my can of cream of mushroom soup. And let me get a spoon here. And I'm going to just jump it in. And yes, this might be part of the Caucasity cookbook, but it does work for what I need it to. I'm going to use one, I believe this is a 10-ounce can of cream of mushroom. Just added right into the vegetables. We're going to scoop that off with my finger so we get all of that in there. And I'm going to put about a half a can of water in there as well. Next up, I'm going to take my chicken broth and schmaltz from yesterday's roast chicken. That little bit of broth that was left in the bottom of the roasting pan yesterday, I collected it all and put it in this container. But that is all free flavor. So save that when you can. Add it to your broths, your soups, your stews, and all of that. Let me switch back over to my good spoon. And one of the last things I'm going to add is my stock. It's pre-made and it is delicious. Now, because I boiled this down to about half of a mason jar from a giant stock pot, I don't need a ton. In fact, I don't need very much at all. Just a little drizzle. And that is all I need. Maybe half a teaspoon, because it is so concentrated that I don't need a whole lot. I do need some more liquid. So I'm going to use that can of cream of mushroom, and as I stir, I'm going to decide how much liquid I need to add, knowing that I'm still going to be adding in a few more veggies and some chicken. Now, I do still only want 2 servings, so actually, I don't think I need any more after. Yep, we're good. Because I'm only doing 2 servings. I don't need a ton of the liquid, so this is probably about the right amount. So we'll just stir that through, make sure that everything gets nice and mixed together. It is a light brown color. Part of that is the leftover stuff from the pot that was already in here. Part of it is that schmaltz. Part of it is that broth. Light brown is good. It doesn't have to be white. Okay. Now, we talked about adding in the rest of our veggies. So I have some of the potatoes and the leftover green beans from last night. I have cut those green beans in half so they are smaller pieces. So I'm going to add my green beans and my potatoes in there. And we also have the chicken from last night, from our roast chicken. And this is just the 2 breasts. It gave us quite a bit of meat. So I'm going to put a couple of handfuls of the chicken in there. I like a lot of chicken. So we'll use probably about half the container. The rest I'm going to put back in the fridge, and I will use it for another round 2 recipe. So let's give that a stir. And we still haven't really seasoned it. All we've really done is add stuff that has either already been seasoned, like our potatoes, our chicken, our green beans, or it was already full of flavor, like our broth and our chicken schmaltz. So I am going to be adding some seasonings. I will not be adding salt, though, because all of that stuff has enough salt in it already. What I am going to be adding is I'm going to add a little bit more garlic powder because, like I said, I like garlic. Metric ton. I'm going to be adding some of that mushroom rub that I mentioned in the roast chicken video. This is by Ozark Forest, and I absolutely love them. So I'm going to add some of that. I find it easier to get the powdery stuff out if you tap it on the edge of the pot. I'm also going to add some more ground sage. My container is a little busted, but it still works just fine. Tap, tap, tap. I'm going to add some more rosemary. Just probably about a tablespoon or two. Sprinkle that over top, crush it as I go. And then a little bit of pepper. Probably, I don't know, half a teaspoon. And sprinkle that over as well. So those are my seasonings. Dust my hands off. Give it a good stir. Make sure those all get incorporated. And stuff is starting to stick to the bottom. That tells me that it is coming together beautifully. And we just want to warm through that chicken, the potatoes, and the green beans while our sauce comes together. Keep everything from sticking. Make sure there's nothing left up on the sides. Okay. Now, I have a feeling that this is more than 2 servings, and that is perfectly okay. There's a couple of things I can do with a kind of base like this. I can either make more and use the biscuits until I run out of biscuits and I run out of ramekins. I could also use it as the base of a soup, and I could add a few more potatoes to it, make it more like a chowder. There's a couple of things I can do with it. For today, though, I think I'm just going to make some more pot pies until I run out. And the pot pies can always freeze as well. So if you want to make 4 and put 2 in the freezer, you can definitely do that. All right, I'm going to cut this off. And grab my ladle. And the way that I'm going to do this, let me get an oven mitt to hold the pot, is I'm going to take some ladles and I'm going to put it right in the ramekins. Start with 2 ladles. Making a mess all over my stove. This one needs a little bit more. And I put my ramekins on a tray in case it bubbles up after the fact. Like after I put the biscuits in and while it's baking, I put it on the tray so that any spillage won't go all over my toaster oven or all over my oven, depending on what I'm using. Today I'll be using the air fryer. I grabbed a few more ramekins, so let's see how much this will fill up. Looks like maybe just 3. There is a bunch of this sauce left in the bottom, and I'm going to try and scrape out as much of that as I can because that is flavor, and we will separate it out over all 3. That's probably good. That back there. Now, this tray is going to be too small for the 3, so let's move it over here. Maybe this one will fit all 3. And it kind of does, so that'll work. Okay, we'll get this out of the way. All right. Next up, we have our biscuits. Let's pull this over here so you can actually see it. I just have a can of Jumbo Flaky biscuits. These are from Aldi's. Love an Aldi's. And there are 8 in this container. So I will have 2 extra biscuits. And that is okay. Nothing wrong with extra biscuits. So what I do is I take 2 biscuits and I'm going to overlap them just a little bit, and then I'm going to push them flat. And I know it seems weird because you want your biscuits to be all puffy and flaky and stuff, but if you smush them together and you stretch them out into the round shape of your ramekin, it just works better. You end up with less gaps and you end up with an even amount of biscuit over the top. And then I just lay it in top of my ramekin. Do this. And this one's already kind of smushed in certain angles, so that makes it easier. But just flatten them out. And pop it right on top. There's 3 biscuits here. So the one I'm going to put on the tray next to it. The other 2 we're going to separate and smush. Okay. I'm going to put that one right up top there. And then our last biscuit hiding at the top of our canister, we will put on the other side of this one. Throw that away. Now, there are a couple of things that you can do at this point as well. You can add garlic and butter to the top. I'm actually going to put a sprinkle of garlic powder over top of my biscuits. Garlic butter is beautiful. You can mix it with parsley as well to give it a nice glossy sheen. I don't need a glossy sheen, but I do like an extra bit of garlic. So now that I have these, I'm going to put these in the air fryer for the directions that are on the can of biscuits, which of course I forgot to look at, so I have to pull out. 350 for 13 to 16 minutes. So I'm going to pop these in the air fryer, and I will see you when we are back. Welcome back to the other side of my kitchen. It has been 15 minutes, and my timer has gone off, and just peeking through the air fryer door, it looks like everything's done. Now, I did bake this, I put it on the bake setting for 375 for 15 minutes, which I think is a little warmer than what it said, but from the way it looks, I think it's going to work out just fine. So let's pull those out. And we have lovely chicken pot pies and biscuits. Let's close that. Oh. Hey Google, turn off the air fryer.
Sure, turning off the air fryer on kitchen.
We have a very lovely chicken pot pie. The biscuit dough has risen. It has browned on top. It still has that little bit of garlic powder. I also have a couple of extra biscuits that are perfectly brown and flaky. So if I decide that I wanted a little bit more bread with it, then I've got a little bit more bread with it. So this has been my chicken pot pie recipe. Altogether, I think it's taken maybe 40 minutes, and that's with wait time. So it's relatively quick, and it came together very quickly once I already had my vegetables and stuff chopped up. So you can do that the night before if you're planning on making it. If you've got extra time while you're waiting for that chicken to roast, you can always cut up your vegetables for a pot pie or a different round 2 recipe. I will be doing a couple more with this roast chicken because I only used about a breast worth today. So just a little bit of meat and some veggies, and we have chicken pot pie for at least 3 meals. So probably lunch today and maybe dinner some other nights this week. So thanks for watching. I am Tiffany, and this was The Single Cook.